So my journey started actually here in South Minneapolis. My mother's from Philly, my father's from Chicago. My father came up to work for Control Data. My mother came up to go to McAllister College. And they met at church over in North Minneapolis, and then the church moved to South Minneapolis, and they got a little apartment over on 4th, 36 and 4th. And then in Bryant neighborhood, they were doing a housing program for families, and my mom had 2 kids, my older brother, my older sister, and she was pregnant with me. So she applied for this like sweat equity housing program, and they got it. And so our church built our house over on 38th in Oakland. So I was born in November, and the house was finished in April. So me and the house have been together all my life.
The house that built
and my parents, they raised us very mindfully. My father was a Black Panther Chicago chapter. And he was kicked out the house when he was 17, so he had run the streets. And so he was intent for his children not to run the streets. But he loved youth because his dad died when he was 2, and he didn't have a father. So he wanted to be a father to the whole neighborhood. And whenever it was report card day, he would give out 50 cents for every A and 25 cents for every B to every kid in the neighborhood. And he was so impactful that when we all grew up and some of us ended up in different paths, he was receiving letters from jail just thanking him for being a father. And I say that, my father passed away in 2019. But I know that I would not be who I am without my father. And I know that I would not be who I am without my mother, who brought me home in 2020. I was a world traveler, always have been. When I left at 18 years old to go to college, I went to Messiah College in Pennsylvania and then Fuller Seminary for grad school. And literally, like every summer, I was traveling to another country. And I never thought I'd be back to Minneapolis. I was like, this is it. I am free. The work that Naomi described in Los Angeles burned me out severely. I have been doing racial justice work formally since 2004 when I was in college. I actually designed an entire conference. The protests in Los Angeles and the work that I was doing, I was the director of the Center for African American Church Studies. And the weight of helping to carry a predominantly white institution through institutional racism, and then also trying to work with the city to try to get them to stop their institutional racism. And then to try to build the bridges between the Black community and these white institutions, it was hard. And then you have to just be there for people. Like when you have a student call you and say like, I can't go to Greek class because someone just got shot. And so you just hold space with the person who is struggling to just make it through the day. But my world really changed when Philando Castile was shot. And I remember that morning because it was Elton Sterling and Philando Castile back to back, and I had watched their videos back to back, and I couldn't stop crying. And I was brushing my teeth, and I was crying, and I cried all the way to work. And I was like, I have to get it together because the students need me, and I didn't know how to pull it together. And that's when I staged my first protest at the institution. And they couldn't fire me because I was the only Black person working in the only Black center. But I burned out, and I moved to Texas. I quit my job. I moved to Texas. I had no job. I had no house. I just put my stuff in a storage unit and I drove to Texas. And I got an Airbnb long term, and I slept for 6 months. And then I woke up in 2019 and I started engaging the intersection between race and health. Because I believe deeply that I was called to the work of racial justice. And I also believe deeply that the work of racial justice cannot always end in burnout. And so I had to explore what would it be for us to actually do this work and thrive while doing it. And it was in that phase, that's when I started my own company. And then so when George Floyd was lynched, but before George Floyd was lynched, guys, there was like 5 or 6 people lynched in 2020. Like, I don't know if y'all remember this, but like the world had shut down. And nothing was normal except for the killing of black bodies by police. That was the only thing that was consistent. So by the time George Floyd was lynched, people had enough. Like, it started with Ahmaud Arbery. And y'all remember with I Run with Ahmaud? And you had Breonna Taylor. There was a kid, I think his name was Sean Bell. And then there was the guy who was in the Walmart who got killed. Y'all remember the video? Like, it was just happening. So my family called me on May 26th, and they said, of 2020, they said, Jeanelle, will you come? And I said, no. And I said no because I had worked in a seminary and I understood, and I had been organizing on the ground in LA, and I was like, pastors and organizers are the same, and they're very territorial over the flock, and I didn't want to have to navigate that. And so 24 hours later passed, and I just kept sending my family information because I had contacts, organizing contacts all over the country. I sent my family information, and they said, Jeanelle, just come. So I was like, fine. Dad had just died. The city's on fire. Mom's freaking out. I'm just going to go home. And I packed 1 week's worth of clothes. And I flew home on May 29th. And I had started on June 1st. The protests on the streets re-triggered my trauma. So on June 1st, I started tending to the memorial as my form of protest. Because I knew from our time in Pasadena that memorials are sacred. And no one's going to move a memorial unless they fear like bad juju, or they don't fear bad juju. And so I was like, we can care for the memorial and it can hold space. And the memorial's still here. 6 years later, still protesting, a space where people can still engage public grief. And I'm really glad for my community who talked about our relationship here in George Floyd Square, because as I say, all politics is local. And if you don't start somewhere, and if you can't figure out how to start with your neighbors, well, then what are you going to do for the rest of the city? What are you going to do for the rest of the state? What are you going to do for the rest of the country? And so being able to engage all the local politics here, but my heart has always been for the nation. And I wasn't going to run for anything. Actually, they tried to get me to run for city council multiple years. Andrew Jenkins pulled me aside, took me to dinner, the whole nine, and I was like, nope. And then last summer, I was invited on a Black scholars delegation to Palestine for 2 weeks. And as a Black delegation from all over the US, we traveled the West Bank and we listened to story after story after story of oppression. And everybody on my team, there were major scholars from major universities. And when we step into a room and we would introduce ourselves to mayors and activists and archbishops and all kinds of people of high influence, they would look at me and they said, George Floyd. And I said, yeah. And they said, so you know how to protest? Yeah. And I would say, yes, I do. Because they understood that what it would take to get the justice that they deserve was community organizing and resistance and a stand like we've never seen before. But it wasn't until I went to a village that was 80% American. And there were Palestinian Americans that would live in both lands. And we met this father whose son was 15 years old and had been put in Israeli prison for throwing rocks, which is the sign of resistance, allegedly. And he was starving. They were feeding him 2 slices of bread, a spoonful of rice, and a spoonful of jelly a day, or something to that effect. He had contracted scurvies, and they weren't giving him medical treatment, and they could see it on his arms. He was not allowed to talk to his parents. He was not allowed to talk to a lawyer. The only person who could see was someone from the U.S. Embassy once every 3 months. Mike Huckabee had gone and spoke with the father and did nothing. While I was there in Palestine, a whole delegation from the U.S. Congress were there and did nothing. Not even for their own. I mean, like, folks have been crying out for them to do something for the people of Palestine. But then here you have a Palestinian American boy born in America And they did nothing for him at 15 years old. And I laid in my hotel bed and I said, if I could save somebody's life, I'd run for office. And that was the moment that it changed for me. Because I realized that this is so much more than politics. This is so much more than Republicans and Democrats. This is so much more than blue ticket and red ticket. This is about our lives. This is about our ability to thrive. This is about our children. This is about us. This is about our parents. This is about our future. This is about our integrity. This is about where we are going as a nation. This is about our ability to impact people and our ability to impact our neighbors. Guys, I know that I'm supposed to just stick with this district, but because of who I am, I couldn't. And so I went all the way to Silver Lake, Minnesota, just to sit with their youth and ask them, what do y'all need? Turns out they need the same thing we need.
That part.
Yes.
They need education, they need health care, they need jobs, they need housing that's affordable. They had a different opinion on guns, and we had a conversation about that. And I was like, are we your neighbors in Minneapolis? They said, yes. I said, do you love us? They said, yes. And I said, well then, what are you willing to give up so that we can live? Because gun culture out here does not make sense in Minneapolis. And having those conversations matter, because I realize that if we are going to go to the state capitol, we have to be able to talk to our Republican neighbors, because what we learn in ICE is that we are all Minnesotans.
Yeah. Yes, we are.
That's right. We are all Minnesotans. And people will ask me, well, Jeanelle, are you progressive? Are you DSA? Are you this? Are you that? Are you left of Omar? Are you right of Omar? And I would just sit there and I would like placate people. And I'm like, well, I don't know. I could be. I might not be. Who knows? And they would get so mad. They'd be like, well, what are you? I'm none of those things. I'm a person who cares about justice. And where I see an injustice, I have to make it right. And then they would say, literally, my sister said this the other day in our campaign meeting, Jeanelle, what promises are you going to make to the people? And I was like, I can't make a promise because our system is so screwed up right now. We don't know what's actually going to even happen tomorrow. I said, but what I can do is I can commit to doing justice in whatever committee they put me in. I can commit to making sure that we are thriving as a community. I can commit that we're going to get through everything together. I can commit that the seat that I sit in is going to be a we, us, our seat, because there's no way in this world that you all should find things out after the fact. There's no way in this world. And one of the things that I've learned from working in an academic institution for 11 years is that what is in academic institutions are microcosms of cities. You have to understand, in state governments, what happens behind the scenes is that we as an administration, we get together and we decide what we want to do. And then we go and we hold student listening sessions so that way we can say to the board that we listen to the students. But the entire time, we always had our intent of what we were going to do and why we were going to do it and how we were going to spend our money. We just had to be able to tick off the box to say we listened to the students. Our government does the same thing.
Yes. Yes.
And I don't know why people can't see that or understand that. It's people behind closed doors. Y'all watched Hamilton in the room where it happens.
In the room where it happens.
In the room where it happens, and they make a decision and then they come out and they placate us over and over and over again. My commitment is not to do that to my neighbors. Because that is who you are. And we are going to figure out the housing. My team, we were talking about housing policy. You're like, y'all, we need to bring tiny homes here.
Bring them tiny homes.
Because we have young people who are individuals. We have individuals who are unhoused, and they don't need big houses. They don't need 3-car door garages. They don't need all of that. All they need is a roof over their head and a place that is insulated and warm for the winter, and to be able to take care of their basic needs. There are different levels of government, and there are different responsibilities that we have. I understand that. And as leaders, there's an ethical and moral responsibility to be able to hold one another accountable regardless of what level of leadership that we're in. We have an ethical and moral responsibility to be able to tell the truth, even when it hurts. We have an ethical and moral responsibility to do the right thing by people always. That's right. Centering the most marginalized.
Yes.
Always.
Always.
Even when it hurts. We have an ethical and moral responsibility to ask some people to give up some things.
Yeah.
Because there is no way in this world that we can achieve equity if those who have too much are not willing to give up something. But then we have an ethical and moral responsibility to walk with them to help them understand why. Because they are people too. We are each other's neighbors. We are our brothers and sisters and siblings' keeper. And yeah, I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat. Are you human? Do you bleed red? Do you seek justice? Do you want to know what is right and what is good and what is required of us?
Amen.
To do justice.
That's right.
To love mercy. And to walk humbly with God. That's all. So simple. And that is the work. And that is the commitment. Yo, we can work out the policies. I'm listening, and everybody has a different idea of what they need. I've heard people talk about the need for reparations. Our youth are talking about the need for jobs. You have people who are actively getting laid off and trying to figure out why is AI taking over my job. You have, everyone is in a different point, and everyone needs different policies. And so there are hundreds of things that need to be addressed. What needs to happen is we need to be able to organize and come together and hear each other out and be able to say, and I know someone said, well, Jeanelle, this is incrementalism. I'm sorry, I am Black. This country has been oppressing my people for 400 years. Everything is incrementalism. But I can celebrate when my sibling wins. And we have to learn how to do that. We have to, because that's what it takes to be in community. I'm so glad that my GFS community came and they spoke about our work here, because this is a microcosm of what we need to take on the state level. Reggie and I, our relationship has been touch and go for 6 years, but we're still here. We're still here. That work to be able to figure out that we have different ideas of liberation, George Floyd Square assumption number 4. But that is okay. But that is okay. And we can still celebrate one another. We can still honor one another. We can still respect one another. And we can still challenge one another. We can still disagree with one another. And this is the work. This is the work that needs to happen on a state level, because I'm tired of watching politics where people are arguing and complaining, but they're not getting anything done because they're waiting for a trifecta. I don't need a trifecta to get stuff done. And that is what I've proven for my entire life.
Right.
All I need is an opportunity. And I will show you. I will show you that we can thrive. And I will show you that we will rise together. That I can promise. That I can deliver on. That you can take to the bank. Because I'm not just going with myself. Because the earth protests with us, God is on our side, and the ancestors have our back, and my community is y'all.
Yes.